You know, personally, I prefer my god to look more like this than this, but we can't all be choosy now, can we? How Venti has remained unpower crept to this day is beyond me. I recently got my Venti all set up with a brand new set of artifacts, and thanks to my focuses being elsewhere, I haven't yet had the time to level them up. This means we're gonna be going in today with level 0 artifacts, which balances out considering the fact that I'm actually bringing a decent weapon to Envisaged Echoes this time, being a refined 5 stringless bow, which is, by the way, 100% the bow I recommend for this challenge unless you have some broken 5-star. As well as having his talents decently leveled up with his ult even being crowned, which is gonna help because the ult is gonna be doing practically everything for you in this challenge.
Oh boy, what a predicament.
But before we talk about that, let's briefly mention the phase 1 that you have to complete to prove you know how to hold a controller and press buttons. You have to fly up to the end and avoid lasers that will do damage to you on the way if you touch them. They don't even instant kill you, so you can actually touch them and mess up a few times and you'll be just fine. You also get health recovery items at the end of this stage as well, so no need to worry about that going into the next stage either. Literally, all you have to do is wait for them to move and then hold his elemental skill to create wind currents and just wait for the opening to fly to the next platform. It really is some elementary school bullshit. Now that we got that obligatory preamble out of the way, let's talk about the actual challenge, because this one was actually very interesting and took me several attempts to complete, which you can watch by checking out the stream where I first got the echo in the description below if you're interested. We're gonna have to reset this. But you're probably not interested, so let me explain. This challenge goes back to the Jean DeLuc Kaching format of giving you waves of enemies to defeat, which is always more difficult than when it spawns them all immediately like it does in the Ganyu or Kirara challenge. There are 3 waves of enemies in the Venti challenge, and this is usually where I'd explain what they are, but I'm gonna be real with you, the actual identities of the enemies don't matter whatsoever in this challenge. This is a mechanics challenge where the most important thing is positioning that requires a lot of trial and error to perfect, which was a pain in the
Yahoo!
For me, but hopefully will be a piece of cake for you to replicate. So let me explain why exactly this is. There are 3 torches in this room, and each time you kill a wave, one of them is gonna go out. After the first wave, the one in the middle goes out. After the second wave, the one in the right goes out, and there are only 3 waves, so you'll complete this challenge when on the left would go out.
Wow.
This is important because you're going to be clearing each wave by using your ult and using these torches to infuse it with pyro. All of the enemies in this challenge are either affiliated with hydro or cryo, meaning a pyro infused Venti ult will simply obliterate them. However, because the enemies are hydro and cryo affiliated, this also means that you have to be careful because it's very easily to accidentally infuse your Venti ult with one of those elements instead, and if this happens on the first or second wave, just reset the run, you're not going to be able to do it. Thankfully, all that this really means though is that you'll have to make sure that you're positioned correctly when ulting to ensure that the ult hits the torch without first getting infused with cryo or hydro. The positioning for the first wave is real easy to set up once you know where you're supposed to stand. You stand right here, a little more towards the torch on the right, facing the torch in the middle, lining it up with the tooth half of this key that's supposed to be used as the starting point. You can tell it's the correct positioning if you can see the legs of the torch stand through the key. If you start the challenge from this exact spot and immediately ult, you will always get a pyro infused ult, guaranteed, or your money back. If you're having trouble getting it, try to stand as far away from the key as you can while still being able to start the challenge. That seemed to be the sweet spot for me. Once you've made sure you've got a pyro infused ult, just throw your elemental skill into it to get some energy recharge back for the next wave, and spam normal attacks to get a little extra damage. There's gonna be some bombs that spawn up in the air which get sucked into your ults to help you deal the damage you need to kill the waves, so even with your stats a little lower, say as low as a Venti with level 0 artifacts would have, you should still be able to wipe them out no problem. There are also some bloaty floaties in this wave which have a real long death animation when they pop, which should give you plenty of extra time to position yourself for the next wave, which is unfortunately a bit trickier. The positioning you're going to want for the second wave is right here towards the right of the room, standing right here upon this tile directly next to this cracked one. There's a few cracked tiles in this room, so it'll help in advance to get a general grasp of where exactly this spot is, so that you can go to it when you're ready. Unfortunately, you can't just run here and ult as soon as the wave starts, because Venti's ult automatically locks onto opponents, which is usually a good thing, but it makes things an unnecessary pain in the
Yahoo!
here. This means that in order to get your Pyro Tornado, you're gonna have to lure these slimes that spawn off to the right more towards the center of the room before you run back over to the right side of the room over to your sweet spot to ult. Fortunately, the slimes don't necessarily have to be behind the torch as long as they're close enough, but getting them to stay behind it when you ult is definitely the goal to make this as easy as it can be. I tried everything I could to avoid this luring step and find some spot on the map to ult immediately at the beginning of this wave, but for the life of me, I just could not find a spot for it. If you want to try, be my guest. But fortunately, luring these guys around isn't really that difficult at all. It is worth noting though that without some higher level energy recharge, it may take a second you need to get the ult charge needed for this wave. For this reason, throughout the challenge, you're gonna wanna constantly, repeatedly be spamming your elemental skill the instant it gets off cooldown to give you as much ult charge as possible throughout the course of the challenge. Fortunately, the third wave is significantly easier. The sweet spot for this wave is right upon the incline of this hill towards the left of the room, and the positioning is actually way easier as well. Because of where the monsters spawn, it's way less difficult to get the pyro-infused ult here without them getting in the way, which means you won't have to worry too much about the exact positioning as you have to do on the first or second waves. Furthermore, in my first and second successful attempts of this challenge, I didn't even do it right. I got a cryo-infused ult and was still able to clear the wave with tons of time to spare thanks to the balloon that got sucked into the ult. All in all, this wave is real easy. I'd say the only real tricky part of the whole challenge is the second wave. It's also easier to take a bunch of damage for no real reason on that wave, which can actually result in some deaths if you're not careful. If you do this all correctly, you'll have plenty of time to spare, so don't worry about waiting for your elemental skill to finish cooling down once or twice throughout the challenge to get the ult charge you need, or taking some time to dodge some enemy attacks to avoid an unfortunate death on an otherwise good run, or even re-kite the slimes once or twice you need them to get to the proper position on the second wave, if you need to do that. Even with lower damage, successful implementation of these strategies will give you plenty of wiggle room in the time department so long as you place your ults correctly. So do what you need to do to ensure that that happens, because that is the most important thing here. Finding these exact positions was a massive pain, so hopefully knowing where they are does a lot of the work for you. Even knowing where they are, it can still be finicky sometimes because of how the ult locks onto enemy locations, so don't sweat it if things don't work out a few times, especially on the first wave. Just don't forget that as per our contract, for each failed attempt you owe Venti 20 bottles of dandelion wine.